Well, we are delighted that you're joining us for another edition of Curiosity, Not Judgment. Welcome. My name is Virga.
And I'm Gary.
We had some really interesting listener feedback and a specific request to cover a topic. And I think it's a good topic. And especially kind of coming off of our conference from last week, I think we're going to find some tie-ins to this as well. But the subject was really around regrets. And do regrets serve us? And are there things that we can learn from our regrets, etc.? There's a whole host of curious questions we can ask, but just kind of wanted to throw that topic out there of just regrets in general and what comes to mind.
Yeah, from a total umbrella statement, I like to think of myself as someone who, because a lot of people say, well, would you do anything differently if you had your life to live over? Da, 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 da. And I always think, I kind of got where I am based on the good things and the bad things that happened to me in my life and some of the good decisions and not so good decisions I made in my life. And would I change anything about that, or am I a product of those? And is my current happiness or satisfaction or contentment based on anything but that? In other words, if I didn't have those things, would I be the person I am? And all those are great stuff. And I always like to think that from a positive standpoint, that I'm happy with where I'm at today. And it's a result of all the stuff, even my poor decisions. And so, do I have regrets? It's like the famous Frank Sinatra song, do I have regrets? Not very many. And even those are, have served me. It's a great topic because we never want to minimize someone's else's pain or someone else's decision making. And again, this is all about curiosity, not judgment. So we want to make sure that as we discuss this, we're not judging anyone for
Mhm.
their past behaviors, decisions, etc. And we can never know the journeys that people have been on, and or minimize any of the pain that is associated with those journeys. But on that subject, if our goal is to be curious about life and to be useful to our fellow man, etc., and to have some generalized contentment in life, I think that this is a fantastic uh, 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 actually topic, and thank you to the listener who suggested it, because there's we should remain curious
Mm.
about our past decisions and try to modify, make better ones going forward. Regrets is a funny word.
Mm. It is. And I think it conjures up all kinds of memories for every one of us, right? We can think about conversations that we had that kind of make us cringe. We said something that hurt someone's feelings. We took an action that maybe was irreparable. The gamut is huge from I said something stupid and I caused some friction to I really botched this up and this relationship is permanently damaged, right? I mean, there's a whole range of actions and reactions that we've had over the years that could potentially fall into that regret category. But I think as we're talking about curious questions in the realm of regret, the first one I would have to say that comes to my mind is, does that regret serve you, in the sense of, did you learn from it? Is it something that was a pivotal moment that you messed up, but you learned and you've changed your ways and you're moving forward in a different direction? And if that's the case, I would argue that I guess the regret serves you in that capacity. But then, you've got the other side of things where you can have this memory that just keeps surfacing and resurfacing over and over and over again. And you're just kind of in bondage to this remembrance of this bad situation, this bad circumstance. And when you find yourself trapped in that recurrent thought loop, I think it is not serving you anymore. And you probably are going to need a little bit of help externally to help get you out of that rut.
Yeah, and rut is a really good thing to say about that. Ruts are literally physical in the brain, and we've talked about this before, but a rut is literally a thought pattern that keeps recurring that is not necessarily one that serves you. Sometimes it can, but sometimes it cannot. And it's important to look at those past decisions. One of the things that I'm a big believer in is the principle of the shot across the bow. I often think that the way my life is being we woven together and the journey that I'm on, that sometimes something will happen and I will have a reaction that I think better of in the future and think I should have done that a little bit differently. So that, and it perfectly prepares me for a time when it's a much bigger consequence in the future.
Mhm.
And because I've gone through that, I'm able to be much more useful in that situation.
Mhm. So I guess I'm not super familiar with that term, but is the notion that you have had kind of a minimal impact event that has then prepared you for a big impact event later?
That's a really good way to say it. A shot across the bow comes from the old naval pirating days when you get a cannonball that comes right across the bow of your ship, and
Mm,
you go, "Oh, okay, we better be prepared.
yeah.
We're in a bad situation. We're in a bad, oh, look over there. There's a ship we didn't notice, right? It didn't hit you. It didn't
Mm,
cause permanent damage. It didn't sink you,
uh,
but it's an event that, whoa, gets
yeah.
your attention and it prepares you before that next hit, you take a broadside.
Mm. That's good. In that example, I just finished rewatching some of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and so I've got that imagery fresh in my mind about cannon fire and ships going down. But yeah, I mean, talk about major impact, right? You've got just kind of moments to shift your perspective, to shift your position, because if you don't, I mean, it will destroy you. And so
Okay.
that is a powerful analogy, and if we are taking that level of seriousness when we think about some of our past experiences and allowing ourselves to learn in that dramatic of a fashion, we may well circumvent some tragedies.
Well, yeah, and again, I think when you are reviewing your regrets, to use the listener's words, um, and you said it well, you shouldn't let them freeze you or make you ineffective going forward, but they can be very useful if you look at, okay, I would have liked to have handled that situation differently. And now, when itself, and there's a whole, you know, theory of our journeys that says like Groundhog Day, right? We're going to get this, we're going to keep repeating the same circumstances over and over again until we get it right? And here's an opportunity to get it right, or
Yeah.
to get it to do it better the next time. And if this is something that is going to be a recurring situation in your life, dealing with a teenager who's not doing their chores, if that's not going to happen once and go away,
Right.
right? A certain customer interaction or you can kind of know that some things are going to keep happening,
Hmm.
or predict that if it happened once, or I got that shot across the bow, this may happen again. Maybe I should think about the best way to handle that, or a
Hmm.
much better way than I did last time. Even if it wasn't a bad way, it just could have done better.
Yeah. I was reflecting on this, and there's very specific places and time in my past, especially as it pertains to kind of decisions I made around my children, that we did something, enacted something, whether it be a consequence, a rule, a standard, that now I look back and I kind of cringe about it. But I do give myself grace because I made the best decision in the moment that I knew to make. And I think that's part of just humanity in general, but it's really a part of parenting. And it's really a part of parenting now. We have got an introduction into uh, like these brand new influences on our children that have never been present in all of history, right? So you have the cell phone that comes onto the scene when my kids are in middle school as a commonplace device. I don't have any experience from that from 100-year-old, you know, people that used to raise their kids back when, or 200 or 1,000 years ago. This is a brand new thing that has never been before. And so there's a lot of areas like this that I think we are just trying to figure out live time. And yes, as we go forward in time, looking back, I think there are going to be some regrets, but there's nothing that can be done about it aside from I wished I would have known then what I know now. And now, how do I help navigate the consequences of a choice that was made in good intention, with good intention, but maybe was ill-informed.
Yeah, ill-informed. You did the best with the data you had at the time. I mean, let's
Sure.
let's give you a little bit of grace even in that statement. It was interesting. I was at a dinner the other night with a child psychiatrist, and this child psychiatrist had just hired on at UNM. I want to be careful that I don't tell who this is. So hopefully there's been lots of people hired by UNM lately. That's our local university hospital. Anyway, but they had been an intern at UNM ever since they graduated from med school, and we got to talking about social media and kids and all that kind of stuff, and he had some pretty negative things to say about social media, et cetera. So I just looked at him and I said, well, we play this game. I've got 9 grandkids with my kids. When are you going to let them have a cell phone? And I always ask early on these days, and then see and compare intent to reality, right? And see
Mhm.
where they actually, because when you got a teenager begging you for something unrelentingly, you may give in a little sooner than you might have initially thinking, right?
Sure.
So I asked this guy, I said, well, so he's got his child with him. When is your child going to get a cell phone? And he looks at the child, he goes, 18. And everybody at the table simultaneously said, well, good luck, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, I wonder these days of the efficacy of trying to say, I'm just not going to allow my child to have one until they're
Mhm.
18. That may make your life easier in some respects. It may have a positive impact psychologically in some respects, but it may not. It may trigger a whole bunch of things on the other side of things in over control of your parents, and every other kid has it, which is never an excuse. Don't tell me Johnny gets it, so you get it, right? But on the other hand, so these kinds of things that you're dealing with, you're saying for the first time in history, I'm going to let you have that. There's been other things that have happened technology wise in history,
Right.
but you're right that cell phones certainly haven't. And how do you deal with those kinds of things? Do I regret that I allowed my middle schooler to have a cell phone at the time that they had it? Should I have
Mhm.
waited to 10th grade instead of allowing an 8th grade?
Right. But I guess, those are the examples that I think of, at least in my own life, where is there regret? Yes, but it's not something I'm going to stew in because I do give myself that grace. I did the best I could with the knowledge that I had.
At the
I
time.
didn't know about, Snapchat back in the day. I didn't know about the images that were being exchanged. I didn't know all of the things that I didn't know. And so, I think there's going to be a lot of us that are in that same boat, not just for cell phone and kid, timing, but for all manners of topics. We come on the scene and we have these decisions to make and we do the best we can. Sometimes we take the time to do the homework and the research and learn from people who have had similar situations in the past. Sometimes that knowledge isn't there for us to glean from. And so it's just a choice that has to be made. But there will inevitably be impact, right? Again, as we kind of shared in the last couple episodes, both positive and negative. There's just always going to be that spectrum of outcomes with some of these decisions that we make. And so how do we learn through the process? How do we take the good, not dwindle or not dwell rather on the bad? And how do we utilize kind of this whole process as a learning, growing experience as we are going to have to make more choices again tomorrow?
There's the philosophy of never look back, right? And I think that's a, a tiny bit too simplistic. I think
Mhm.
it's fine to say, look, I am going to give myself grace for my past that, I mean, unless I just through bad motives and I've learned I need to be more others focused versus selfish. Maybe there was some things I did as a teenager that were truly selfish decisions, whatever. But as an adult, I mean, I pretty much have tried to consider the, all the options and all the other stakeholders involved, whether it's something with teenagers, whether it was early career decisions, whether it was, whatever. And I think I think I had the right motivation. So I think we could say, look, I'm going to give myself grace for those things, but that doesn't mean I couldn't improve.
Sure.
my decision-making process, and maybe ask other people, or realize that I had some blinders on, or maybe that I had an agenda that I need to re-examine because of old ideas, or psychological things that I was trying to do. I think there's room for both. I think,
Mm.
giving yourself grace, and saying the never look back part of, look, I'm in general, with good intent, did the best I could with the data I had at the time.
Mhm.
However, I could now, as I face new decisions, go back and say, I probably could have done better in this regard.
Yeah. Well, and there's going to certainly be those people listening that says, "Oh, you don't even know the level of my regret." Maybe there was a moment of violence that took a life. Maybe there was a moment of intoxication that led to a severe accident and injury. And I'm not pretending that every decision or every situation that we've encountered can just be, it's a lesson learned, let's move on. Right? I don't want to be flippant about it. So there will inevitably be regret about some of these circumstances, but I think the key really remains not getting stuck in that mental rut, because you can have this sense of shame and, I don't know, self-hatred, self-loathing around a circumstance that you caused that impacted somebody else's life, and mourn and grieve over it. But then you've basically then given over your own life in the process as well, because you're rendered kind of impotent from doing anything of value moving forward. And so I don't want to be flippant about it, but I also want to recognize that, there are going to be those moments of something really, really serious has happened as a result of a decision that we've made. And we, even in those moments, have choices about how we're going to tackle the remembrance of the past and what we do moving forward.
And you're exactly right. And this is why we started out saying that, we know that everybody's journey is different, and we're certainly not here to judge. But you're right. There are going to be things that have happened in the moment, out of anger, out of a state of mind that's not great, et cetera, that occur. And again, that's where I think the useful part of those kinds of regrets, which are true regrets. I should not have been in that situation. I should have not been in that state of mind. I should have not have, you know, drank and drive, whatever the situation is, or and had horrendous outcomes or consequences. Then hopefully what that does is help you to make the decision, call it a drastic decision, call it a very intentional decision, to never do that again, to never be in that situation, to take an anger management class, to really think through what my approach to driving is going to be, to parenting is going to be, to my career is going to be, and make sure that those true regrets
Mhm.
have as minimal as possible a chance of recurring.
Mhm. This reminds me of a little feature piece I saw on the CBS Sunday morning show a couple weeks ago. And there was a story about this man who had, I don't remember what the initial offense was, but something he had done, committed some sort of a crime while dressed as Captain America. So he was clearly intoxicated. I don't remember if it was alcohol or drugs, but the mug shot was taken in his Captain America outfit and then kind of made the popular news cycle. And, this man is devastated. He had had a years long addiction issue, but through the social media extravaganza of this photo, a former classmate saw it, and that classmate just so happened to run a recovery center. So the classmate reaches out and says, "Hey, I want to offer you a slot in this program." The man goes through it, finds his sobriety, and then in the, however many years it's been since then, has helped hundreds, if not thousands, of others going through addiction to find a new life and a new beginning. And it was really a story about, a moment of deep regret, an arrest due to an issue of intoxication. Again, I don't remember the crime, but how there was a turning point, a decision that was made on the part of two people, right? The one who was offering help and the one who decided to receive the help and to be helped in his own journey. And that how he in turn then decided he was going to help others. And I just thought that was a beautiful example of a season of deep regret and making a conscientious choice to be curious about, am I going to stay in this place or am I going to turn my life around? And what could my life become on the other side?
And using that regret
Yeah.
for people in the future, which is the perfect that's the principle of neither forgetting nor dwelling on the past
Yeah.
and figuring out how to make it useful to others going forward, right?
Mhm.
So you don't try to bury it and you don't dwell on it, but you recognize it, you accept it, and then you move forward and try to help other people in that situation. I mean, what a great turnaround and use of a regret.
Yeah. And I'll share one more quick story if you have a moment. Just that another conference that I was at years ago, and the story of impact that was so profound to me. So it was a mother sharing the story about her adult son. So her son was a Marine. He was home on leave or was in an in-between period where he was not in uniform, but he was at a bar socially. He was with his girlfriend. The girlfriend's ex-boyfriend comes up and starts to stir up trouble, starts to get agitated. I think maybe even pushes the girl. The Marine turns around, punches him one time in the face, kills him. It was, the perfect broken nose thing up into the brain or whatever. And because the the Marine had been trained through the military. The sentencing judge through the criminal case said he was, equipped with lethal means and sentenced him in the state that they were in to life with no chance of parole.
Mm.
And the mother's telling the story, the whole audience is horrified, and you can imagine all the emotions that have gone through it. But the son had to come to this place of, is there regret that he ended somebody's life? Oh, you bet. Is there anything that can be done to go back and change the circumstance? Not in the least. So now he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. And now what? And what he decided to do in terms of, like, he started this ministry in this prison and was, helping again hundreds of people, and just has this prolific ability to just deeply impact these people who are broken and lost, and maybe generational imprisonment, right? The things that they have experienced in their past from their fathers and grandfathers, and how he's able to be a light in this dark place. And again, just like, these are the stories. I'm not saying that horrible things don't happen, but I think the question of what do we do with that regret, and how do we turn things around as we look forward towards, the impact on our own lives, and the impact that we could potentially make on others.
So I see several curious questions, which we try to
Mhm.
come around to out of this. I think you said it well. Number one, is this regret serving me? And
Yeah,
is it serving me in the amount of time that I dwell on it?
yeah,
Number two, can I recognize that I neither forget the past nor dwell on it? And how do I then use that to be useful to others going forward?
yeah,
How can I do that with that regret? The next curious question is, having this regret, it keeps coming up in my mind. I guess that's the definition of a regret. Can I resolve to do better next time? Can I treat it like a shot across the bow? Maybe even journaling about it. Sometimes our mind, the reason it comes up is because our mind doesn't think that we've dealt with it properly.
yep,
So maybe if I deal with it properly and journal and or be intentional about this thing and how I could prevent it in the future or minimize the risk of it happening in the future, what can I do with that? So I think that there's several really good curious questions that we can have around regrets.
yeah, without question. I love it. And then I would add one more. Do I need to apologize for something?
Mm,
Right? That's
that's
another
right.
one to tack on there. Well, I think this has been a really rich conversation, and I certainly welcome all of our listeners and viewers. If you've got a topic that you would love for us to explore, just send it on in. A couple easy ways to do that. You can, of course, always comment on the YouTube channel, but you're also welcome to send us a direct message through our website, which is curiositynotjudgment.com. So, Gary, I don't regret this conversation at all. I enjoyed it, and I'll
Won't go
look
on my
forward to
list of
next time.
regrets.
Indeed. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, see y'all.